This podcast is brought to you by the U.S. Postal Service and USPS.com/smartbusiness.
This is a CNN podcast. Here's CNN headline news anchor Renee San Miguel with The Digital Life. As I sit down at this microphone, there is a second child, a son, due any day now in the San Miguel household. In fact, it was 2 years ago that Father's Day morphed for me from being a giving holiday, as in what golfing-related gift can I get my dad this year, to a giving and receiving one, as in, will my 2-year-old daughter actually let me sleep in late this Father's Day? Hence the focus on fathers, internet resources for us, and being a dad to kids who are also, whether you like it or not, living the digital life. To help with that, we're joined by Jeremy G. Schneider, a therapist, writer, and workshop leader. Go to jgs.net for more info on him. He has been on the Today Show and quoted in the Washington Post and Philadelphia Inquirer. I wanted him on the digital life because he now has a podcast and online column, both called A Father's Voice. Jeremy, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here.
So tell me what the reaction has been to your podcast and the online column.
It's been pretty good. I mean, what's nice about it is that it gives me a chance to hear what fathers actually have to say, which is kind of ironic. They get to hear my voice, and then I get to hear their responses, either through email or through even phone calls and checking onto my website.
And I'm wondering, you have regular, clients, I'm sure. I mean, you do. You're based in Long Island. You do a lot of workshops, and you meet with the families and talk with and do the therapy. But this is kind of advice online, is it not? I mean, you have a section on your website called Ask a Dad. And I'm wondering, for a therapist maybe used to face-to-face counseling, what are you keeping in mind when you give that counsel online, to folks who you don't know what they look like or what other circumstances they bring to the table? It's
definitely a different shift. I mean, the focus for when I receive something in email, it's more about establishing some connection, letting them know that what they're feeling or what they're experiencing is not abnormal, because for the most part it's not. For instance, I get emails from dads who have read some of my other articles that talk about, how hard it is sometimes in the beginning to develop a connection with their child. And they write me back saying, oh my goodness, I read this article or I heard this podcast and it really affected me. And I then respond with some tips, some suggestions, the things that I did, things that I've seen work for other fathers in similar situations. And so it's more focused on, that connection, but also providing some quick tips, whereas therapy gets much more in-depth. It's much more insight-oriented, things of that nature. And you
get more of a history of the actual person involved there, or the couple involved.
Correct.
Are there any themes developing here from the dads who contact you online in terms of the problems they're having, or just what thoughts they have?
I mean, there's two main things that I almost consistently hear from other fathers or even other mothers who are aware of the issue as well. The first one is what I just mentioned, the issue with having trouble having an immediate connection with their child. Sometimes it can take several months for a father to really start to feel the bond develop between themselves and a newborn. And for fathers in the beginning who expect the connection to happen quickly, it can be kind of scary. It makes them question their abilities, their confidence as a father. What am I doing? Am I doing something wrong? Is there something wrong with me? And so trying to help them understand that sometimes takes time and what some things they can do to help that. The second one is actually something I call, the mommy do it test. Mm-hmm. And that happens particularly when they get more into toddlerhood and, they start screaming, mommy do it, every time, the father picks up the child or tries to change the child or feed the child. The child wants to be with the person that they've spent the most time with, and unfortunately for the father, that's often the mother, because in many situations, at least the ones where the fathers come to me about this, they've been the ones working while the mother has been staying home. And so, that is also one of the things that they really struggle with. And again, it's something that deeply affects their sense of confidence and their comfort level with being a dad.
And I'm also wondering if you're finding, in terms of, my own personal situation here, comparing and contrasting the kind of fathering or parenting that I got from my dad, and then the issue involving how I'm going to, what I'm going to be doing differently, and what things do I want to keep and pass along to my children as well. I'm wondering if anybody's gotten in touch with you on that regarding that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that question of, what was it that I learned as a parent from my parents, and what do I actually want to keep? And unfortunately, I actually find that not many people go about that process in a conscious way. They don't take a quote unquote objective look at their relationship with their parents' actual parenting style, and think about the fact that they probably picked up pretty much everything from them, and then what are they going to transmit to their own children?
Mm-hmm.
And so taking a more conscious approach to that, really starting to think about it, like, well, they did this. I actually don't really like that. I want to try it this way. But boy, when they, the way they handled my homework situation, I really enjoyed that. But the way they handled this situation, not so much. And taking the pieces and then figuring out how to kind of unify it together for what works best for that individual parent.
Taking the things you want to pass along and then maybe leaving off the things that, because of, just a lack of knowledge or,
right.
Tradition or whatever you maybe
right.
you want to leave behind.
And even figuring out what else you need to learn so that you don't make similar mistakes that your parents made, because they also didn't know that much either, presumably.
Because I now live as we all do, in the digital age and the internet age. When upon learning that I was going to be a father, the internet was my first choice in terms of research, in terms of finding things. Of course, the local bookstore as well. What to expect when you're expecting, that kind of thing.
Right.
Are you happy with the choices for dads on the internet now in terms of resources, or what are you finding out there?
I'm actually very unhappy with the information that's available. I mean, there are some really good sites, but you look at the depth and breadth of what is available for mothers, specifically for mothers, and then compare that to what's available for fathers, and it's quite stunning. I mean, I've been a father now for 3.5 years, and I keep checking and looking and working online, and it doesn't seem to be getting significantly better in my mind. For instance, one of the sites that I think is really good, there's the National Fatherhood Center or the National Fatherhood Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good site, and they send out newsletters that talk about research about the father's impact on their children and the things they can do. But there's so little of that out there.
That's what I have found as well. When you plug in fathers on the internet in your favorite search engine, you end up getting a lot of stuff about, divorced dads and how they can regain custody and the unfairness with, in their view, with the legal situation. But in terms of just basic knowledge, you really have to dig deep. This leads into the effect of technology on fatherhood. I mean, my 2-year-old daughter knows how to load the DVD player with Lady and the Tramp. Should I rejoice or be very, very afraid here?
Well, I think what's exciting about it, at least for me, is because I also really like technology. It's constantly forcing me to think ahead.
Mm-hmm.
My son was learning how to use the remote control when he was 1.5 years. I don't know how he figured out which was the off button and which was the volume, but he does it. And now it's great. He takes such pride in that accomplishment.
But then I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean the idea here that my wife also raises the issue of, well, I'm not sure I want that. I want our children to grow up, and as do I, reading lots of books. And we read to my daughter, and we'll do this to our son when he gets here, and making sure that that's the first media that they have the experience with.
Yeah, I guess I don't worry about that as much. I mean, also I have the privilege of putting my kids to bed every night by myself. So I get to sit with them and read, 3 or 4 books every night, just the 3 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, that is incredibly special time. So then when I see them getting interested in computers, getting interested in technology, I already know, just like what you're talking about, that they have this reading physical foundation, and that the rest of it is just more interest. It's another avenue for experiences, for learning, for growth.
Well, my daughter's just surrounded by microprocessors everywhere in her talking teddy bears or leap pads or, mommy and daddy's computers, which have pictures of her serving as screensavers. So it's kind of hard to escape that.
It is. I mean, as soon as they were conceived almost, the first day we saw the ultrasound and found out that there was actually 2 of them inside my wife's belly, we put the ultrasound picture on the web so that we could share it with our friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they found out that it was twins, was by going to the website and seeing the sonogram, the ultrasound picture in their face, going, oh my goodness, there's 2.
Yeah.
And I mean, so it's, on the one hand, there certainly are some challenges and it makes things more difficult, but it's allowed people to connect to our children who don't see them on a regular basis. My sister who lives out in California.
Mm-hmm.
She gets to see the pictures. She gets to, I have a blog called 20 Copies. She can visit the blog on a regular basis and find out what's going on with their lives in a way that, we couldn't do